Hello and welcome to this week's Facebook and LinkedIn Live. My name is Elizabeth Willetts and I'm from Investing in Women. And today I'm going to be chatting with Caroline Green, who is a career coach with the Talent Cycle. I'm going to be talking about how employers can work through the challenges of flexible working and make sure it's viable for them, their business and their workforce. So we're going to be talking today about the challenges of flexible working and how employers can work through that and overcome those challenges. So I'm going to be chatting today with Caroline Green from the Talent Cycle. If people have got any questions, comments about flexible working, the challenges maybe you've seen it posed in your workplace, in your industry, and maybe how your employer is overcoming them, then please do pop those in the comments. Let us know if you can hear us all okay. Give us a like or an emoji. That would be fab. But we're going to be talking all about how employers can work through the challenges of flexible working. So thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today. So
you're very welcome. It's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting me along again.
No, it's always great to chat with you. So, because before we went live, I just sort of said that obviously in my line of work, I talk to a lot of mums, and flexible working has been such a game changer for a lot of people. And there's no denying that. And it's definitely helped retain certain pockets of people in the workplace. And, you know, if you've got disabilities, or maybe you've got care responsibilities, or you've got school pickup, then remote and hybrid working is, you know, fantastic. And I work from home and I love working from home, but I can sort of see that there is challenges to flexible working for organizations when they're trying to create, you know, a company culture potentially. And also speaking to some of my market, which is obviously predominantly mums, a lot of them recognize how, you know, brilliant hybrid and remote working is, but those with older children do recognize the challenges it maybe poses to their children, and, you know, concerned that they won't have the socializing aspects that they maybe enjoyed at work in their 20s, won't have the learning and development and mentor opportunities that they maybe had as well. So we're going to be talking about that today, and how, you know, forward-thinking employers are thinking about that and overcoming it as well. So thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today. So I know I've sort of just spoke a little bit about the challenges. What do you think are the challenges posed by flexible working?
Yeah, so I just want to start by saying, you know, I'm with you absolutely. Flexible working is a fantastic thing, and I'm the same. You know, I'm self-employed, so it's a bit different. But you know, even when I was working for other people, I love working from home. And like I said, it's not just about remote working, is it? There's lots of different aspects of flexible working and what works for lots of people. But there are absolutely, undoubtedly challenges to that as well, for both those individuals and the employers themselves as well. And I think we're really noticing now is the point where we're starting to see some of those challenges play out a little bit. You know, when we had lockdown, we talked a lot about flexible working, but actually I was sort of reflecting before this chat today, we didn't really work flexibly because we were all doing the same thing. We were all stuck at home. You know, we were all in that same boat. Okay, everyone has different, you know, personal situations and things, but, you know, we were all doing the same thing. And so it kind of worked fairly easily, you know, or from a sort of career aspect anyway. I know sort of, I know lots of, like you say, working mums, particularly, but dads as well, trying to homeschool as well as doing the career side of things, you know, was a challenge. But, you know, it worked and everyone was kind of in that same boat. Now we've moved and it's sort of changed slightly, where we've got people who are doing different things and there are new challenges arising because of that. And I think it's really important. I think as human beings, we're quite good at trying to ignore some of those challenges, you know, in life generally. But actually, I think it's really important to acknowledge those in order to look at how we then fix them. You know, as you just mentioned, that sort of it doesn't, you know, this sort of flexible working doesn't work for everybody. It can do, but we all need to put in a bit of effort, both the employers and the individuals, to make that happen.
So what are the specific challenges then that you are seeing or hearing about? You know, so it'd be good to know, you know, exactly what are the challenges that potentially employers are facing.
I think some of it is because suddenly you haven't got everyone sitting next to you anymore. So now if you want to maintain your company culture, how do you do that? If you're an individual who wants to kind of get on in your career, how do you get recognised? How do you get noticed when you're not sort of sitting next to people? Those are some of the key challenges. How do you develop staff, you know, again, when they're not there? Or how is it, you know, particularly we were just sort of talking before we came online about, you know, young people and going into that world of work for the first time, who are already really unconfident, who are already, you know, the education system teaches them that they must not fail. They must, they must get the best grades and so on. And so lots of them are afraid to even try because they're for the fear of failing. So that's, and how do you support someone through that? That's a challenge in itself, even when you've got that person sitting next to you, when they're maybe not sitting next to you because they're remote working or they're working different hours and things like that. All of these different things can be a real challenge for people. And that's something that I see across lots of the different employers that I work with. But all is not lost. There are absolutely ways that you can help move forward with that sort of flexible working and make it a positive thing, because like you say, there's so much opportunity and brilliant things from flexible working. So there are lots of different things that employers can do at organizational level and at team level, and that individuals can do to help that kind of work. So would it be helpful for me to talk about those?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm like, yeah, really interested. Sorry, this seat's so creaky.
So at organizational level, I talk to lots of employers and they talk about equality and diversity and inclusion. It's sort of a term that gets thrown around a lot. And I think we need to be really mindful that we're not just talking anymore about things like race, gender, disability, things like that. There are other aspects to this now as well. And that flexible working piece is really important. And it's great that some employers, are embracing that. And, some of the fantastic people that you work with who are quite happy to kind of hire people on different flexible contracts and whatever that means for that kind of individual in that particular role. That's great. What you then need to think about, it's not enough to just hire that person and then expect them to come into that culture that's kind of operating in a way that it would have done in the past. You need to think about actually, how do you create an inclusive environment for everybody, wherever they are based, whenever they are working, whatever their sort of circumstances of what their job looks like. How do you create that inclusive environment? So a lot of this is at organizational level, thinking about that. I recently worked with a client actually who we were looking at her career change. And we were talking about, rather than, so lots of clients I work with want to do a huge sort of leap, from this type of career right over to something completely different, when actually often it's a series of stepping stones. And she put it really well about sort of saying that actually, you don't learn to fight in the war. You don't learn in the middle of the battle. You learn how to fight in the middle of a battle. Actually, you need to kind of be proactive and make those steps, lay those foundations before you go into that battle. So for her, that was doing some more training and learning and getting some qualifications so that she could sort of do her stepping stones. At organizational level, you need to think ahead of time of actually, okay, how do we make this an inclusive environment? Yes, it can be really challenging and complicated, and people don't like change, and you've got all of that kind of going on. But actually, often it's in the little simple things that people just don't think about. So, for example, this time of year, lots of companies are talking about Christmas dues. It's thinking about, actually, how are you going to include all the people that you have working within your organisation? So thinking about things like, have you got an option, for example, to do something online, as well as you could do a sort of in-person event, but could you just do something online as well, or some sort of, hybrid? Are there sort of different options for that? Thinking about timings as well. Often organisations will have a Christmas do during the working day, which is great for those who are kind of full-timers. But actually, what about those people who work part-time who aren't able to attend? Thinking about how do you adapt and flex. Some of this is just about common decency and courtesy and supporting those who work for you. So it may be that actually being a bit more flexible, that person usually works on a Monday and Wednesday, but okay, that week they're going to work on a Thursday because then they can go to the Christmas do as well. Yes, okay.
Giving them the option, isn't it, I suppose, and the choice.
Exactly. And just, having a bit of understanding, yes, they're not going to be doing their usual sort of hours of work, but actually they should be considered and, valued as an important member of the team as well. So looking at those different options, and sometimes even really simple things, we've just obviously had Remembrance Day. That's a really easy thing to include people who aren't necessarily there in the office. It's really easy to set up. If you've got a 2-minute silence where everyone's in the room together, set up a laptop so that people, online can view it and take part as well. So it's thinking about adapting, to those needs of all the individuals. And another big thing that comes up, regardless of sort of flexibility, is about communication. That's often something that comes up in engagement surveys, is thinking about how you communicate with your staff. So again, do you, without relying on technology too much, do you talk to all your staff by online means, for example? Do you have a weekly all staff where maybe you do that online, and then people who are remote can log in, you can record it? That means that people who perhaps aren't working at that particular time that you're having it can still engage, can still be involved. and that will help not only their kind of engagement and their engagement with the company, but also it just helps maintain your culture as well, because that's something that can very easily get lost when you haven't got everyone kind of working together. And I think kind of linked to that as well, thinking about things like training. We talked about sort of new starters, induction, training, things like that. Think about how you can do that in a different way. It's a mind shift, mindset change. Think about how you can do that in a different way. First of all, it's not just as a learning and development person, I just bang the drum of actually L&D isn't just about going and sitting in the training course anyway, regardless of flexible working. It's about so much more. There are so many different ways that people can develop and grow. You can, encourage that process in lots of different ways. So it might be sort of shadowing each other. You can shadow someone even if you're not sitting next to them. But again, thinking about the flexibility, thinking about the times when someone could shadow, that sort of works for different people as well, different sort of shift patterns and things like that. So there's loads of different stuff that you can do with that in terms of learning and development, and getting help as well sometimes with some of these things. So people such as myself can help organizations look at, okay, how is your culture sort of showing up to people at the moment in the different sort of forms of roles that they are doing, and how can you keep that going? What other things can you do to keep kind of growing and developing your staff? So that's all kind of at organisational level. I'm aware I'm just talking at you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, good. Yeah.
I hope it's not coming across as a bit of a rant. But I think it's really important that organisations sort of do think about that at the organisational level of actually what are your policies and procedures around some of these things as well, and thinking as well about, as well as communication, it's thinking about that culture piece and about the safety and well-being of your staff as well, because the one thing that is really important to keep in mind is, with flexibility comes the danger that there may be lots of people who are effectively lone working. So you need to kind of factor that in some of your plans as well. So think about, how you keep staff safe if they're in the office on their own, or even if they're working from home. How do you know that they're okay? This isn't about checking up on them or micromanaging them, but how do you know that they're okay? So it's about sort of checking in with them, which brings me nicely to kind of that sort of team level piece. I think there's a lot as well that you can do at team level. So if you, for example, are a manager, and I've been there pre-COVID, pre me setting up my business, I managed a team who we worked in a hybrid model because there just wasn't enough space in the office. So we weren't all in the office all the time. And I had a team, and I think I was full-time, and I think I had one other full-timer. Everyone else was part-time, and they were doing all sorts of weird and wonderful kind of shift patterns of their part-time because it worked for them and their, various school runs and other commitments and things like that. So it was great. So it was great that it meant I had, the best staff possible. It was fantastic, but it did just require a bit of thought and a bit of planning, which is what so much of this is about, is just thinking ahead. And I know that's really hard when you're a busy manager and you're kind of tearing your hair out and you've got a million and one things to do. But remember, you've got that team of experts who are there to do the sort of be at the coalface and do that day-to-day work. Your role is about the strategic plan for your team. And part of that is, how are you going to operate as a team when you're working in that model? So is it that you're looking at, I know I drew out all sorts of weird and wonderful sort of complicated designs and plans to work out actually when were the times when everyone did happen to be in the office together, and kind of utilize that time and ring fence that time and have that really, really precious time that we could spend together to help build that culture within the team. And also to encourage other team members to do that as well. I didn't know, I was a manager, but I didn't always need to be there. They could sort of do lots of cross collaboration and things like that. So encouraging them to sort of take that approach is really important. And kind of linked to that as well, I think it's about, particularly as a manager, think about the norms that you are setting within your team. So for example, so I worked full time, but you as a manager may not. That's absolutely fine. What you need to do is think about then the norms that you're setting. You need to kind of lay out your stall and say, these are the hours that I work. These are the days that I work. You can even have that in your email signature, for example. Be really clear, but be really clear with your team about that as well. And do not be tempted to then, if you work Monday to Wednesday, don't be tempted just because you've got sort of your team are struggling on a Thursday to then kind of jump in and be working with them. Because then what all that does is tells them that actually, yeah, in theory we can work part-time, but really we can't. We've got to kind of jump in all the time and so on.
I know, yeah. It actually sets a really bad, so your team might be initially quite grateful for the help, but then if you're doing that consistently, then you are setting that expectation, aren't you, of working outside your normal hours.
Absolutely. It's and I think a lot of managers I speak to do it out of, with the right intentions. They want to help support their team, and that's great. Do that in advance. Think about, okay, I'm not going to be there on Thursday and Friday. What am I going to put in place to help that team when I'm not there? Because as you say, it's sort of, the team might be grateful that you've helped, but actually, what is it you're teaching them? What are they learning from you about your expectations? Same with, if you've got a split day, whether you're a manager or not, whoever you are, if you've got a split day, for example, you've divided up your day so that you can go and do the school run, let's say, so you're going to be there working in the evening, so you're going to be sending out emails in the evening, that's fine. Just be really clear that you don't expect an instant response from people. If you're emailing at 10 o'clock, doesn't mean that everyone else has to. So just kind of being really clear with that. And again, it's all about communication. As with so many things in life, it all comes down to communication and being really, really clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and your expectations of other people. And I think in terms of your expectations of other people, it blows my mind. I speak to so many managers who forget or don't have one-to-ones with their team members, or don't have them kind of once in a blue moon, or they just focus, going back to that development piece, they just focus on the kind of the to-do list for that person. They don't talk about that individual's development needs and things like that. It's so important to do that, especially when you're not sitting down next to someone all day every day. You need to understand, you can't get that vibe of actually, are they having a good day or not if you haven't spoken to them all day. It's making sure that whether it's just relaxed little check-ins here and there, or whether it's more kind of formal one-to-ones, it's really important to get a feel for how they are and how you can support them. And then you get an idea as well of, if it's not working, the sort of flexible working side of things isn't working, you can understand a bit about that and then make the adjustments that you need.
Mm-hmm. Really, do you know what I think this is really good about? I think a lot of employers get nervous that if they're not like micromanaging, sitting watching somebody being over their shoulder, then that person might not be working and messing about. And
so it's a fundamental mind shift. You need to stop thinking. Sorry, point my finger at those employers. It's not about hours worked. We need to get rid of that idea of hours worked. It's about results achieved. And if your member of staff is achieving what their objectives, if you're being really clear, if you're doing your job and being really clear and taking that organizational strategy, thinking about what that means for your team, what objectives for the team, what individual objectives, and being really clear about what those are and those goals and timeframes, and even things like culture and how you expect to not just what you're going to do, but how you're going to do it. You need to do that proactively, and then let that person get on with it almost, but keep reviewing it. You can keep an eye on it without having to check in on them every sort of 5 minutes to just make sure that they are working. Okay, maybe you might try and contact them and they're going and making a cup of tea. That's okay. That happens in the office. It's about achieving that balance and making sure that they're still performing, but in a different way, in a different world. And in actual fact, your employees will value that so much more. It's all there. The evidence is all there. The research has been done that says that your employees, if you're creating an environment of psychological safety where they feel that they can be themselves, where they can come to you if they have got any problems, and you can have honest conversations about the kind of level of support they need, because let's be honest, no one really likes being micromanaged, but there are situations where someone might need some more support. So again, going back to their kind of people first coming into the workplace, or maybe kind of returners who have perhaps lost a bit of confidence and need a bit more hand-holding and things like that. That's all fine, but have that conversation with them. That's very different to saying, like you say, okay, I don't trust you because I can't keep my eyes on you.
Yeah, because in my experience, people that work remotely, if you've given them, the appropriate work, like if you plan that work for them. I've got people that work with me and they do it brilliantly, and I don't think they would do it necessarily any better if we were all sat together in an office. But I think what's interesting is, I suppose, the hybrid. I was going to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
And people are working on different days, maybe coming into the office on different days. What happens with those team meetings where maybe some people are at home and some people are at work? Because I've had those team meetings in the past in my old employer, where maybe I've had to work from home on the team meeting day. And actually, dining in is a different experience than sitting around the table.
I think it is, but I think there are things that are helping that experience now because, like you, I've done sort of in the past, those sorts of
Yeah,
things.
I mean, this was like pre-COVID, so it was a speakerphone in the middle.
And it's painful sometimes. Yes. I think lots of employers are now cottoning on to the fact that actually that's going to be the way forward, that maybe they don't need these huge offices, they need smaller spaces, and they need to instead invest in things like technology. There is a lot more technology around now that can facilitate better hybrid meetings, but actually again it's not about technology, it's about people, and it's about your attitude and approach, and include, it's about that inclusion thing again, making sure that you are including everybody, whether they are again sat next to you or whether they are online. And there are ways of doing that. I'm part of the Career Writers Association, and last week the other week we had a hybrid meeting. There was about 20 or so of us on the call. There was probably about half and half actually, in terms of people in the room and people online. I was one of the people online. And because we had a brilliant chair who facilitated it so well, actually, we felt like we were part of that meeting, even though we were online. And literally all Chris had was a laptop and a Zoom call or whatever it was we were using. And we were all on there. And there was one moment where he was passing the laptop around and I started feeling a little bit seasick. So there was that wasn't so great. But generally, because of how he facilitated it, because he was making sure, making it fun. He was talking about, are you okay? In the room people, are you okay? Online people. And he was just really, it was still a professional meeting, but it was sort of fun, and he was including us. It's just about getting that mind shift of actually it's not what it used to be. So I haven't got everyone in the room, so let's just not forget about the people that are online, and just making sure that they are being included. And that it does work. I think it's too easy for people to just say, oh yeah, I can't do hybrid, it's not going to work. Actually, it does work. Again, all of this stuff, I think it just requires a bit more effort, a little bit more planning and thinking it through beforehand, and a little bit more effort for it to really kind of work in the moment.
So it sounds like it needs the planning, but then it obviously needs the upskilling, particularly of the managers, the frontline managers that are managing those teams, and potentially working hybrid, remote, flexibly.
Absolutely. So much of the sort of training that I deliver for managers now is, like you say, it's more on the upskilling side of things. It's about, and again, actually, a lot of it isn't dramatically different to what I would have thought before, so having difficult conversations, that's the thing that people always get stuck with, having difficult conversations, but I will now adapt it to talk about actually how do you manage that when that person isn't sitting there with you, how do you have that difficult conversation online, for example, or how do you manage it around the sort of hours that they and you are working. And, like you say, it's just more about those sort of skills. It's just about an awareness often. But also it's not, we talk to us about, organisational level and managers. It's not just them. It's about individuals as well, and the difference that an individual can make, and being proactive in some of this. So, I know when we met before, which I think, gosh, that was about a year ago now, and we talked about, time flies, we talked about get employers chasing you. So it was all about how you become liked, known and trusted, how you have your personal brand and you go out there and you sell that personal brand to people. It is exactly the same kind of principle for, internally, particularly if you are working flexibly. So if you are concerned, a lot of the clients that I talk to, they're concerned about, well, how do I get on with my career now? Because I'm not in the office all the time. And I'm not, it's like that, there was an episode of Friends where Rachel didn't smoke and she was worried she was going to kind of...
Yes. And I suppose there probably is that bit of FOMO if you were maybe seeing other people going into the office and you're not, and you can't, or whatever.
Yeah. But I think absolutely, again, it's that kind of effort, and it's that being proactive. You're not just going to have those natural kind of water cooler moments that we say, so you need to create them yourself. You need to set up your personal brand. So that's who you are, what you stand for, what, your value proposition to the business. Why are you there? What have you got to offer to the business? And go out there and proactively kind of sell it to them. So it can be things, it can be things as simple as well of just checking in the morning. If you are remote working, for example, messaging your team and just saying, hi, how's everyone doing this morning? Just reminding them that you're still there, that you haven't just disappeared. It's things like that. Or sometimes, again, this links to the development side of things as well. it is about, thinking about the different ways that you can develop yourself. So like I say, it's not just about sitting on a training course away from the business where no one can see. It's actually, what can you proactively do to develop yourself? Well, that might be a case of joining, talking to your manager about, okay, your manager goes to such and such team meeting, and okay, that might be a bit above, what you do, but could you go along and just observe, or could you go in place of them as part of your development? And then actually, you're raising your face, you're raising your profile amongst other people. That can happen virtually or in person. It's about coordinating, working with what you've got, but it raises your profile with the right people. Same as sort of joining other groups and things across the organization. It's that sort of proactive thinking about and leading by example as well. So if there is a group that you'd really like to join, but they only ever meet in person and you're remote, have a conversation with them about, could we do a hybrid meeting? Lead that way. It's everyone's responsibility for culture as much as it's not just something that happens at organisation, it's the individuals within the organisation. So think about different ways that you can do that and add value in that way as well.
It sounds like it's a lot of effort for both sides, isn't it, to make it work? But I think as well, I think the thing about remote working, and this probably is a negative, could be construed as a negative thing, I don't mean it to be, it is quite results focused because I guess you're not dazzled potentially by somebody's personality. You're not like the class clown or whatever, but the office clown is really funny and it makes everybody laugh, but maybe isn't actually producing the best work, but they can often do well because they've got a great personality.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more easier in a way to judge people on their work, and actually hopefully, the right people get promoted and get recognised, but then it can be quite pressured as well, I suppose, if that is what you're being judged on as well, if you've been reliant on a brilliant personality, maybe.
I think you can still make the most of either of those things. Like you say, I think it's good because, like you say, it kind of almost levels the playing field, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. But equally, if you've got that lovely, wonderful, bubbly personality, you can still push forward with that.
Yeah.
And something again that I've worked with managers on a lot is as a Myers-Briggs practitioner, I talk about people's preferences, and that's not to say that Myers-Briggs focuses on you have preferences, so preferred ways of doing things, but that's not for introversion. So I like to think things through. I tend to be, I love sort of working with other people and interacting with other people, but I need the sort of quiet time as well, which is why remote working works really well for me, because I can have my kind of quiet time where I just, hide away at home and do my, whatever it is I'm doing and sort of thinking and working on, say, putting together a training course, for example. But then I'm quite happy to go and deliver it, but I can have that balance. So I think it can work, for everybody. Some of it is just about understanding actually who you are, how you work, what you stand for. Like I say, it comes back to your personal brand. It's being aware of your personal brand and making sure that you become liked, known and trusted for that personal brand in whatever way kind of works for you.
So we've talked a bit about the challenges of flexible working for employers. So some people might be watching this thinking, oh, it sounds like a lot of work. I can't be bothered. Why should employers embrace flexible working, and what are the benefits to them?
Because again, it's all the evidence is there, is absolutely, think about all the people that you work with, these amazing talented people, and you wouldn't be able to tap into that talent. It has been so hard. Obviously the economic picture is changing a bit at the moment, but it has, certainly in the past kind of year or so, it has been really tough for employers to recruit people. They just feel like the talent isn't there. Or they're so busy kind of competing with other people. How do they encourage this great talent? And one of the ways is, we've all sat there and kind of gone, actually, this flexible working is really good. Like you say, it's effort, and as an individual, if you want to kind of move on, it's effort. But actually, there are loads and loads of benefits to it as well. Sort of practical, emotional, there's so many benefits to it from an individual perspective. So actually, everybody wants a piece of that. So if you're an employer, you're just instantly kind of ignoring a massive talent pool if you're not thinking about flexibility. There are also a lot of benefits in terms of engagement of staff. If they're able to work in that flexible way, if they're trusted to be able to do that, then they are going to be happier, more engaged staff. And that, there's again lots of evidence that supports then that produces greater performance. So that is better for organisations. That means potentially more profit if you're a profit business, or just better results, quicker results. Whatever kind of organisation you are. So there's lots of different benefits. Yes, we, like you say, it's almost like we focus on the negative side today, haven't we? Which is all the kind of effort it takes. But actually, it's like anything in life. If you put a little bit of effort in to start with, then you'll see massive return in lots of different ways, both for individuals and organisations.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I've loved our conversation. It's been so good today, Caroline. Thank you so much for joining me. So where can people find out more about you, and what sort of services do you offer as well?
So people can find me, I'm on LinkedIn or via my website, which is thetalentcycle.co.uk. And there's links there to my email address, which is caroline@thetalentcycle.co.uk. In terms of services that I offer, there's sort of two sides to my business, really. One is about supporting individuals with their careers. So helping individuals work out, get into and thrive in their careers. So that's sort of dreaming big, working out what they want for the future. Lots of clients I work with, they may have had a fantastic career to this point, but actually now it's not working for them. Maybe it's a kind of career that isn't allowing them flexibility, and so on. So we kind of look at actually what are the other options? What could they do? How could they kind of move forward with that? And then we look at the practical side of things, so CV writing, interview tips, LinkedIn advice, how to kind of utilise that, and then how they thrive in those careers. So, some of the stuff we talked about today, actually, about that development, how do they keep developing and growing and pushing themselves forward in their career. So I sort of offer services all around those kinds of things, but also supporting employers as well, because this is all about, for me, careers, good quality careers is about people being successful and happy in their roles. Mm-hmm. And some of that is about, the right person in the right career for them, but also about the right environment. So supporting employers to create the right environments, whether that's about the culture, whether that's about management, and upskilling them, or just supporting them with things like flexible working and how that all works. And we've talked a lot about development today. That sort of sounds like it's an easy thing. Actually, it's not. Sometimes, some of the managers I speak to really struggle with, well, I've got this member of staff, I really do want to develop them, but I don't really know what development they even need or how we go about it. So I've got a new program in January that will support people with that as well. So there's information on the website about that as well. So that's all that. I'm a busy lady.
Very busy. Oh, well, thank you so much for making time for us today. If people have only caught a bit of it, then the replay, like all the others, is available on the investinginwomen.co.uk website. Thank you so much, Caroline, for joining me today and talking about this brilliant subject.
Fabulous. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.